Time to end the speculation and actually take the test. It begins on the next page. Choose the option that you identify with the most for each dual choice. If you happen to identify with both options, choose the one you find the most important. Below are some average scores from studies conducted in the United States. What's your score? I'm prepared to admit to scoring 14 points, which makes me average, more or less. To qualify as a narcissist, a score of over 25 points is required. If you score 30, you can rest assured that your friends find you to be hard work from time to time. Over 30? I actually find it hard to believe anybody would ever score over 30, for a very simple reason. I find it hard to believe that a genuine narcissist would actually respond truthfully to these questions. Again, note that this score is only to be viewed as an indication. Whether you actually are a narcissist or not is a matter that only a qualified psychologist could resolve.
Table summary: celebrities exhibit a higher average score compared to both university undergraduates and the general adult population. University undergraduates and adults show very similar average scores, with undergraduates having a slightly greater score. The narcissist test presents a series of paired statements, where one statement indicates a narcissistic trait and is assigned 1 point, while the other indicates a non-narcissistic trait and is assigned 0 points. The test covers various aspects such as influencing others, modesty, risk-taking, reaction to compliments, leadership aspirations, self-perception, assertiveness, and desire for authority. The table presents a continuation of the narcissist test, offering a series of paired statements where one choice indicates a narcissistic trait, awarding 1 point, and the other indicates a non-narcissistic trait, awarding 0 points. The questions cover various aspects such as manipulation, desire for respect, body image, decision-making, ambition, self-assurance, dependence on others, storytelling, and expectations from others. The pattern consistently assigns a higher score to responses that reflect self-centeredness, a strong sense of entitlement, and a need for external validation or control. Unlabeled summary: this table presents a continuation of the narcissist test, detailing additional paired statements where one choice indicates a narcissistic trait, worth 1 point, and the other indicates a non-narcissistic trait, worth 0 points. The questions cover aspects such as desire for satisfaction, reactions to compliments, desire for power, interest in trends, self-admiration, desire for attention, personal freedom, authority, leadership, aspirations for greatness, ability to influence others, and concern for public appearance. The test is designed to assess the degree of narcissistic tendencies based on accumulated points.
What might you use this information for? It can let you know when you're at risk of behaving in ways that might make you unpopular with others. If, on the other hand, you couldn't care less what other people think, you're probably not a narcissist after all. If your score is higher than you'd like, you might want to spend some time thinking about why this might be. How who you are can alter your experience. Naturally, who you are is going to have a significant impact on how you assimilate the contents of this book. However, it will also influence your interpretations of whether or not there are signs that you're at risk of slipping into narcissistic behavior patterns. Perhaps you know what your colors are, perhaps you don't. If you'd like to learn more about how other people perceive you and how you actually function on a deeper level according to the DISC model, you can download the Surrounded by Idiots app and perform a simplified analysis of yourself, or of anybody you meet. Having more information about your color can help you interpret the results of the test you just took. Different colors tend to assess the different questionnaire options slightly differently, and this is something that is rarely factored into the design of tests like these. For instance, take this statement: I have a natural talent for influencing people. And the statement that it's supposed to be weighed against: I am not good at influencing people. A narcissist wouldn't hesitate for a second before determining that option one is clearly the superior one and go on to choose it for that exact reason. Score a point for narcissism, then. But is influencing other people really a good thing or a bad thing in and of itself? Well, that depends. If we're talking about negative influence, like manipulating or deceiving others into doing things they don't really want to do, then yes, it's a bad thing. But if we're talking about encouraging people to make positive changes, that's a completely different matter. It could actually help someone turn their life around. They might stop drinking at the weekends, start working out, start treating their significant other better, or whatever it may be. This means, then, that we can't really say that there's anything inherently negative about the ability to influence others. However, the fact that somebody thinks of themselves as a powerful influencer is still telling. To take another example, the thought of ruling the world frightens the hell out of me. As opposed to, if I ruled the world, it would be a better place. Suppose you respond like most people alive today would do and pick option one. Ruling the world ought to be a daunting prospect to most. But if your response was the second option, that the world would be a better place with you at its helm, well, score a point for narcissism. The problem here is that you might actually be right. There definitely are people whom we would prefer to see in charge of the world, and who would make it a better place if they were. However, those most suited for the task are also very likely to turn down the offer to take it on. The greatest leaders, you see, possess a large measure of humility. If you ask people from different parts of the world who their role models are as leaders, the responses you get will naturally vary from one continent to the next. However, a name that is universally mentioned, a person whom everybody always seems to appreciate, is Nelson Mandela, the former president of South Africa. Would the world be a better place today if he had been more influential during his lifetime? My highly unqualified guess is that yes, it would. The interesting thing, though, is how Mandela would have responded to the offer. It seems very likely that even Nelson Mandela would have been terrified at the prospect of wielding that much power. This, then, is our challenge: to separate an individual's real abilities from their own assessments of them. A narcissist is always going to say that things would be better if everyone did as they said. Whether they actually have the skills required to lead doesn't factor into it. My suggestion to you is that you go over all the questions one more time and make sure you answered them accurately. This might even teach you a thing or two about yourself. Now, what does all this have to do with my colors? Your confidence will vary depending on your color. Reds and yellows both tend to exhibit very high levels of confidence. They have strong egos and basically expect to be up to most challenges they come across. Yellows don't think too much, they trust their intuition. I'll have fun ruling the world, just think of all the new, important friends I'll make. Reds usually don't really care what other people think. But if they really think they might make a difference and help the planet, they'd give it a go. They are risk takers, after all, and they'll figure that they'll manage to deal with any mishaps that occur along the way. Greens tend to have less faith in their abilities. They would certainly be hesitant to take on a challenge like this. Sometimes there's just no way you could get a green to admit that they're good at anything at all, least of all ruling the world. Blues are self-critical. All they see, wherever they look, including inside themselves, is flaws and imperfections. I doubt they would be prepared to pick option two without doing a lot of serious soul-searching first. Again, what we're measuring here isn't really their abilities per se, but rather the individual's estimation of themselves and their abilities. So, what are your colors? Do you feel that they influenced your responses to the questions? If you still think your score is too high, let's say that after giving it some thought, you're still uncomfortable with how high your score is. Maybe you feel that there are things in your life that look like they're headed in the wrong direction, and you're not happy with your behavior overall. If this is the case, you're very insightful, and I can only congratulate you for your maturity. Self-esteem is beneficial for the individual. I discussed that earlier. Nobody wants people to dislike themselves and be unhappy with who they are. But as with so many things, this is only true up to a certain point. The matter of whether it's possible to like yourself too much is one that's worth serious consideration. As we saw earlier, you can get too much of a good thing. An excessive focus on the self can cause people to exhibit behaviors along the narcissistic spectrum. In our society, our focus has shifted gradually from the needs of the collective to the needs of the individual. This may actually date back all the way to the Renaissance. I'd be surprised if we'd seen the worst of it, too. I'm not seeing any signs that the trend is slowing down right now. Quick versus long-term gains. Since being a narcissist brings short-term benefits, our own impatience will always encourage us to seek immediate solutions. We want instant gratification. Nobody has the patience to wait for anything anymore. The downsides to narcissistic behavior are never obvious from the start. It can take years before a narcissist is exposed. But by then, it might be too late. Good habits are hard to cultivate but easy to live with. Bad habits, on the other hand, are easy to cultivate and hard to live with. The thing about bad habits is how often we mistake them for good habits at first. The negative effects don't come about until later, years later sometimes. Why do some people steal supplies from their workplaces? Is it because they can't afford to buy their own screwdrivers or pencils? The stocks run out, and then when my coworkers need a pencil, they're all gone. It's a short-sighted, immoral way to behave. But all the same, many do it. Not you, of course, but other people have allegedly done that kind of thing. Why do people eat too much fast food? It's not because they hold some deep desire to be overweight. The answer is short-term gratification. It can take years before you suddenly realize that your pants no longer fit in the waist. Despite this, we choose pizza over salad a little more often than we ought to. Some people drink too much. The reason for this is probably not that they've formed a deliberate intention to ruin their lives, it's just that the alcohol gives them relief in the moment. The hangover will be harsh. In theory, you could have made a fool of yourself in front of the whole company. The long-term consequences of drinking too much, as we all know, can actually be far worse than that. And yet many of us consistently allow ourselves one or two drinks more than we should. Compulsive gamblers exhibit the same disturbing psychological mechanisms. You start out just giving an online casino a try because you heard about how somebody hit the jackpot and was able to quit their job. So you bet $20 or so. The excitement of playing and the anticipation of winning the jackpot are captivating. Maybe you even win a little at first. This encourages you to make another bet, and before you can spell debt collector, you're wagering hundreds of dollars every night. Not you, of course. I know you wouldn't do that. Other people. Good habits are hard to cultivate, but easy to live with. Bad habits are easy to cultivate, but hard to live with. It's a similar story with narcissism. It's self-destructive in the same way that gambling, adultery, drinking, and the like are. Think of it as a trap with a time delay. It doesn't spring until much later. The effects of focusing exclusively on yourself and ignoring everyone else might seem to be all positive at first. Taking everything for yourself is the same thing as stealing from others. It's also like stealing from your own future self. This can be pretty hard to pick up on. Is there something we can do about this? Having to step out of the spotlight isn't going to appeal to everybody, but as long as you're not a clinical narcissist with a full NPD diagnosis, there's still hope for you. Humility as a cure. I can remind myself of the long-term effects of focusing exclusively on myself. True contentment is only awarded to those who are able to refrain from focusing on themselves all the time. Think of the greatest names in history. All the most important people promoted the opposite of narcissism by publicly preaching the virtues of generosity and humility. Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King Jr., Mahatma Gandhi. To mention just a few, these people's names are immortal. They and their deeds have forever left their mark on history, but they weren't motivated by some drive to be famous or even memorable. This topic connects in specific ways to our nervous system and its neurotransmitters. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter that causes you to experience a sense of pride and elevated status. Whenever you feel important or acknowledged, you receive a dose of serotonin. That's why so many of us value public recognition so highly. It's also necessary, to some extent, for us to feel accepted by our peers. That's why big award ceremonies are so important. When you graduate from school or win a sports competition or a singing contest, the point of celebrating your success with a public ceremony is that it's enjoyable, both for the winner and for the audience. If serotonin weren't a part of this picture, we could just have sent a letter that read, "Congrats, you won. Just print out a copy of your certificate using your own printer." Oh, and you should probably sing the national anthem, too. This is the part that hooks the narcissists. It turns them into attention junkies. They constantly crave more of it, even when they know it might annoy other people. They simply can't help themselves. In our world, things like status and prestige matter a great deal. How do we display our status and prestige? By indulging in excessive materialism. We buy a more expensive car, a more impressive house, better-looking clothes, with all the right accessories and all the right logos on them. That's why the logo is there, on the outside of your bag. Other people are supposed to see it. It's not enough for you to know that the bag was made by so-and-so, insert your own favorite brand. The problem, as anyone who's prone to excessive shopping will know, is this: the high doesn't last long. That is because it lacks any kind of connection to other people. You're not forming relationships with the people who are admiring your new belongings. Most of them are just strangers you meet in town, and what they think doesn't really matter to you. So you end up feeling empty inside and craving more. Maybe there's another way you could be expressing yourself. A way that could allow you to get what you truly crave: true appreciation from people who genuinely care about you. That would be a humbler attitude. Maybe the opposite of narcissism is exactly that: humility. Genuine humility is a great source of strength. The ability to view and assess yourself objectively and exaggerate neither the positives nor the negatives. Truthfully, correctly, accurately, and precisely. Humble people are highly appreciated by others. They tend to find themselves surrounded by people who genuinely care about them. Humility also means being grateful for what you have. Note, there's nothing wrong with wanting more from life. I have a long list of things I'd like to have, do, and experience. But I also constantly remind myself of the things I already own or have already experienced or done. This doesn't make me a better person, but it does help me maintain a realistic outlook on my life and ensures I always have something to strive for. As I said earlier, very little in life is free. Practicing humility, being grateful for what you have, and actively helping others can all be effective ways to counteract any narcissistic tendencies. The three happy drugs. Oxytocin is the neurotransmitter that kicks in whenever you experience emotions like love, trust, friendship, and caring. Oxytocin releases can be triggered by a variety of means. One of the simpler ones is physical touch. This is one of the reasons why hugging somebody can feel so good. It can give you a genuine buzz. Neuroscience has already taught us that we can get a kick out of helping others. Try doing something friendly and helpful for somebody who has no way to reciprocate. Make note of how you feel afterwards. I can promise you this: you'll be feeling good. It did feed you a dose of oxytocin, after all. Free of charge, the great advantage to this is that your body is actively encouraging you to repeat behaviors that make you feel good. The more oxytocin you have flowing through your body, the more generous you'll be to your fellow human beings. Perhaps the question is this: why do you want to feel good? Self-promotion is one thing, humility is another. Both of them can produce a high then. The most serious risk you'll be running is having an infinite supply of genuine admirers. I imagine you might be able to learn to live with that. One way of practicing humility is to reconsider your material needs. Do you really need a new car every 3 years? Do we need to replace all the furniture every 5 years? Is it necessary to buy a new smartphone every 6 months? Could you maybe make do with this coat for a little longer? The images you post of yourself on social media, who are you really doing it for? Is it for yourself? Or is it for somebody else? Does it really detract from your value if you don't receive public acknowledgement from your peers every day? Could you perhaps get by on acknowledgement you receive from the people you actually care about? I sometimes hear the following quote, but I haven't managed to find out who to credit it to. We buy things we don't need with money we don't have in order to impress people we don't like. Many have suggested that mindfulness might serve as a counterweight to this, or meditation. At a minimum, they might provide inner contentment. That seems worth a try. Learning to meditate isn't difficult at all. And if it can actually bring us inner peace and help us relax, what do we have to lose? Imagine if we could feel that great, almost every day, without it costing us anything at all. Being the chain. Every man is guilty of all the good he didn't do. Voltaire too much? Over the top? Maybe, but I do want a reaction from you. I want you to give these matters some thought. Genuinely? You see, I think this stuff is important. Everyone agrees that narcissism is a bad thing in the long term. Assuming we really are living in a narcissistic culture, in a society that makes us act and behave in ways that might not come entirely naturally to us, is there some way we could reverse this trend? In the end, you and I are just like everybody else. We all think about ourselves more than anything else. It's what we do, and we do it in a multitude of ways. Let's suppose you're aware of the risks, and that you realize that you, too, are vulnerable to the danger of focusing too much on yourself. You've accepted the idea that it's not good for the people around you in the short term, and that it's even bad for yourself in the longer term. You've decided not to let yourself get carried away by this narcissistic culture. You want to take a stand for something else instead. That's my main objective in writing this book, to stir something up in those who read it that might cause them to choose an alternative path. Perhaps you could even do some good here. Of course you could, and I'm sure you can find ways to do it that I've never even considered. Get inspired, but then what? When you listen to an inspirational speaker, you become inspired. You feel a rush of energy, a sense that something big is about to happen. I know plenty of people in the industry, and some of them are unbelievably skilled. You feel like you're on top of the world afterwards, even if you haven't made any progress. The problem with this kind of inspiration is that it is entirely dependent on your going home and making something of it afterwards. If you don't get started that very same day, your buzz will start to fade, and the lecture will soon become just another memory. Inspiration is a good thing, we need it, but we also need to do the things of our own accord. So, where do we start? With the most natural thing, yourself. Instead of exclaiming, I am the greatest, when you see your reflection in the mirror every morning, cultivate genuine confidence. You do this by managing things by yourself. Genuine confidence can only be created by successfully achieving things on your own. Why not exploit the way nature has designed us? The idea here is to start off with something minor, perhaps something you've never tried before but would like to learn. You try things out, learning a bit at a time. When you take a step back, you realize that you've accomplished something you were unable to do a week ago. You've made progress, dopamine gushes forth, you experience a mild rush. You tell some other people about it too. They smile at you because they feel invigorated by what you're telling them. They congratulate you. Serotonin kicks in, you feel proud. Perhaps you choose to teach your new skill to somebody. You see the happiness and gratitude in their eyes. Oxytocin time, you feel even better now. And come to think of it, things aren't really that bad, are they? Once you've enjoyed all those waves of brain chemicals, how will you be feeling about yourself? Will you appreciate yourself a little more than you did a month ago? I can guarantee you this, your self-esteem will be stronger now. Perhaps not by much this first time around, but ever so slightly. You'll be feeling better and more comfortable with yourself for entirely natural reasons. There's nothing artificial or complicated about this. You feel better, it's genuine. Also, learn to accept this. There will be times when you'll feel terrible. It's one of the injustices that come part and parcel with living on this unforgiving planet. Every day can't be wonderful. Nobody is happy all the time. Only a fool would imagine that there's some way to avoid feeling down ever again. But now you know of a simple way you can change that feeling. Give it time. Apply the procedure and learn it step by step. You should be aware that there are risks involved in this. What you want to avoid at all costs is the narcissistic trap of always favoring short-term thinking. Dopamine brings short-term rewards. Its effects are powerful, and it can be just as addictive as some hard drugs. Cocaine, amphetamine, and various opiates have the same effects on the brain as dopamine. They all make you feel absolutely fantastic. However, this feeling only lasts for a short time, after which you'll need to get hold of more of the same drug in order to experience the same effects. Eventually, you'll need a lot more. This is how some drugs can be so addictive and can get people hooked so quickly. Anybody who has tried them will tell you that it doesn't take long to develop an addiction. However, this reward is a deceptive one, as it doesn't actually do anything to solve any of your problems. Whatever caused you to need that high will still be there afterwards. Basically, the body's reward system has been hotwired. So, how do you go about getting your reward without risking picking up any short-sighted, risky addictions? If it was easy, more people would be doing it. What we know for sure is that most people need a reason to actually do the right thing. They need a purpose in order to see meaning in anything. Without a purpose, you might as well spend all day on the couch at home, playing video games and smoking weed. After all, nothing matters. At this point, I'm going to take a chance and resort to a very old, and if we're being honest, slightly cliched, metaphor. Perhaps you've heard the story of the stonemason in the desert. If you have, please bear with me and know that this version won't end the same way as the one you've heard before. The story goes more or less like this. A wanderer is crossing the desert and comes across a man cutting stones. The wanderer asks the stonemason what he's doing. The mason responds, perhaps unsurprisingly, that he is cutting stones. When asked how he feels about his work, the stonemason spits on the ground and exclaims that it is mind-numbingly dull. The wanderer walks on and comes across another stonemason. Again, the wanderer asks him what he is doing. This stonemason responds that he is making parts to build an amazing cathedral, which will reach high into the sky and be the most incredible building ever seen. When asked how he feels about his work, this man says that he loves it. Just imagine being a part of something that incredible. The story usually ends somewhere around this point. It is supposed to help people reach the profound insight that stones can be cut for different reasons. However, the true lesson here is slightly obscured. We all grasp the basics of the story. It's more fun to build a beautiful cathedral than to simply cut stones, even if the actual tasks involved are identical. Why is this, though? Why does it feel more meaningful to cut stones for one reason than for the other? Finding deeper meaning. This is where the question of meaning enters the equation. Is there some hidden meaning behind everything? Does it really matter what I do? Am I cutting stones for a paycheck or to create something that's greater than myself? A beautiful cathedral, sure. But does the cathedral itself mean anything in particular? It represents spirituality, sharing something huge with, potentially, millions of people. Now, a cathedral is a house of worship, and not everybody is religious. But the real point here has to do with taking part in the joint creation of a value that's greater than the sum of its parts, making a place where people can find faith, or themselves, or whatever they need to manage their lives. However, it's also a place for contemplation, and for concepts and ideas that are perhaps greater than any individual person. All this makes a cathedral far more than just a beautiful piece of architecture. Few individuals, narcissists and psychopaths are the exceptions, here, are immune to the feeling that comes from being part of something like that. This time, the neurotransmitter doing the work isn't dopamine, but rather serotonin and oxytocin. These substances are more associated with long-term happiness than anything else. No meaning, no purpose, no goal, no direction, no reason to get off the couch. No positive expectations of any kind. This feeling has been familiar to human beings for millennia. Early on, they may not have known as much about the mechanisms of the brain, but they did know how human beings function on a basic level. It's actually quite remarkable. That's what makes the story about the stonemasons such an important one. We need meaning, purpose, and a goal. We need direction in our lives. When we have that, we'll suddenly find countless reasons to get off the couch. This is precisely why long-term unemployment is such a disastrous fate. It instills a sense of hopelessness. It pacifies the individual and creates the illusion that they can no longer contribute at all. Somebody who has no purpose and performs no function will soon break down. That's why you're better off taking a low-paying job than persisting in unemployment. It will protect your mind. Credible studies suggest that unemployment is a far worse outcome, even when the economic compensation remains identical. Anybody who decides that there's no point in working since it won't earn them more money than they would get from welfare is living dangerously then, it seems. Social media, an alternative approach. I'm not sure I can repeat this enough. The internet is not the real world. On the other hand, the internet is an excellent tool for spreading narcissism. Narcissists love attention. Narcissists love to show off. They take great pleasure in knowing that all eyes are on them. They are driven by a deep craving for likes and positive feedback, and they are prepared to go to great lengths to get them. The image they present of themselves and their lives is often a highly exaggerated one, and they demand recognition for the illusion they've spun, too. The more fully they can deceive people about the true state of things, the more they expect people to cheer. Influencers present themselves in perfect settings, wearing elegant clothes, with perfect tans, always on the move. They are in the back seat of a limo or driving a Ferrari. If you look closely, you'll start to notice peculiar details. A common thing on Instagram is posts where you see two cars in the same picture. Not any old lemons, though perish the thought. On the left, a 300,000 Bentley. Jaw-droppingly elegant, it is a wonder of design. On the right, a 400,000 Rolls-Royce. Simply divine, unattainable. Below the picture, a call to action for the followers. Which one would you like to own? Which one will you be driving next year? People post their responses. I'll take the Bentley. No, no, the Rolls is much nicer. Both of them, somebody shouts in all caps. The air is heavy with daydreams. Others exclaim that they would literally do anything to get their hands on a car like that. Watch TV or engage in meaningful activity. In an interview he gave a few years ago, one of Lamborghini's top executives was asked why Lamborghini never advertises on TV. His response: "Our customers don't watch TV." Let that sink in for a moment and think about what he's actually saying. In one post, a guy is steering a small yacht towards another much larger and more expensive ship, which has a large open hatch on the side of its hull. The post reads, "While you're watching TV, this guy is parking his boat in his other boat. I don't know." Diamonds. Female influencers wear millions of dollars worth of jewelry on their hands, often with a pretty nonchalant look on their face, like they couldn't care less. It's just some old diamonds. They just happen to be valued at something like the lifetime earnings of an average worker. You often see pictures of houses, two palaces, really, gaudy and costly enough to be the envy of kings. Some of them look like they have 30 bedrooms. There's an Aston Martin in the driveway. The post often reads something like this: "I'll be living in a house like this in 5 years." Or, "Like this if you're the first millionaire your family has produced." There are worse examples than this. Far worse. I'm not lying. On several occasions, I've seen Instagram posts of people literally bathing in money, filling their bathtubs with cash. We're talking banknotes here. A table full of stacks of bills, kilos and kilos of paper. The written post underneath these photos will often say something like, "What's it going to be? Have you decided what you want your lifestyle to be? What are you prepared to do to get it?" Bizarre, I'd say so. In one video clip I saw, a guy walks up to his fridge, grabs a fistful of money, and carries it out to the balcony. There, he tosses it over the side, from the 10th floor or so, and the bills spread far and wide. Another guy releases fistfuls of money from the sunroof of his car while he drives down the street at full speed. It's literally raining money. Are the videos fake? We'll have to hope so. But there's no mistaking the message here. Accumulate money until you have enough to fund any harebrained scheme you can come up with. Some people make a point of letting everybody know that they're self-made. Nobody helped them. They did it all themselves, simply by doing their thing. Many of them go on about how they don't care about anything or anybody else and invest everything into themselves and their own success. And to top it off, they encourage the rest of us to do the same. You could just go for it too. You could have all this cool stuff that I have. You could travel by private jet and sports car. You could stay in five-star hotels and enjoy a life in the sun. It sounds cool, it oozes confidence, and it's even the kind of thing many of us might actually go for. Claim your share of the world, go for it, do your thing. But what does that really mean, to do your thing? Apart from the obvious, that is. Since nobody can achieve much of anything on their own, you have to give some thought to what this message is actually supposed to be telling us. Of course, feeding yourself, this kind of thing won't do you any harm as long as you keep in mind that it's all a deceptive illusion, from start to finish. You can always choose to laugh at all the insanity. At the same time, this particular kind of self-centered hypernarcissism, I can't think of a better word, is actually an indication that all the people who can't make it on TikTok or Instagram, but who still want that glamorous lifestyle are going to try to get it, or something like it, some other way. What might that be, assuming we rule out a life of crime? Well, if you want enough money to buy a new car more often than your neighbor does, travel constantly, and heap plastic toys over your children, your options are basically to either get yourself into a huge amount of debt or spend your money on endless scratch cards or bets on horse races. Relax. I'm not actually recommending this. I'm just making sure you understand what I'm getting at. How to counteract hypernarcissism. You start your own business, work hard for 7 years, and reap the rewards of your efforts. Success takes time. It doesn't come overnight. When I started writing this book, Jeff Bezos was the wealthiest human alive. Apparently, as I am finishing it, it is now Elon Musk. Those guys are legitimately loaded, but they didn't achieve that overnight. It took them both more than 30 years to get to where they are today. You have to work until you're groaning with exhaustion, but if you do, success will be the outcome more often than not. Like financial icon Warren Buffett said when someone asked him why so few people actually follow his investing advice. Nobody wants to get rich slowly. Perhaps we should be more cautious about comparing ourselves to others. After all, there's always going to be someone out there who's outdone us. We can't compete with the narcissists. Let them burn themselves out in their struggle to appear to own the most stuff. If you need a role model, pick a wholesome one. But more than anything, make a point of considering your life in comparison to 1 year ago. Do things look better now? If so, that's great. Celebrate with a night on the town. If things, unfortunately, seem to have taken a turn for the worse, that's bad. You should immediately sketch out a plan for addressing the situation. Get to work on that, and as soon as it's finished, start implementing it. But don't worry too much about comparing yourself to the people you see on Instagram or Facebook. Remember, the internet is not the real world. There's a lot of content out there, from bad news to hate speech, bullying, and whatever else that's anything but confidence boosting. I don't want to get too deeply into all that stuff because it's a real mess. Digital detox. My advice: turn everything off for a month and see what effect this has on your stress levels. Ditch Twitter for 30 days. Uninstall the Facebook and Instagram apps for a month. Are you on other platforms too? Remove them for 30 days. Did this idea give you chest pains? Did you suddenly find it a little hard to breathe? That might be a clue, of course, I'm just saying. Relax, you can always reinstall it all later. Try it for just 30 days. If you live to be 80, that'll be just 1,000th of your life. You can do it, it's free. You actually stand to learn a lot from an experiment like this. 30 days is nothing. More and more people have started doing this, and all of them, without exception, say the same thing: I feel so much better. How can this be? There is a simple, physiological explanation. The stress hormone cortisol is suddenly no longer being frantically pumped into your system. You're finally disengaging from the state of being permanently ready for battle. You're no longer constantly on alert. You begin to relax, both physically and mentally. You start valuing other activities besides sitting around with your phone. Perhaps you'll start spending more time with your child, or husband, or wife, or parents, or whoever matters to you. Perhaps you'll start exercising, or reading books, or calling a friend and engaging in more genuine communication. Some people are so happy with the results of giving up social media that they never go back. Ever. It's quite remarkable. I raised the issue of a digital detox during a digital lecture I held in 2020, and it was met with a certain measure of skepticism. The most common reaction was this: what on earth will I do instead? Well, what did you do before you got hooked on using that device? But to return to the subject of narcissistic culture, after denying yourself these options for some time, you'll see the deviance inherent to certain behavior much more clearly. You won't be numb to it anymore. It'll be more obvious to you that what some people get up to online is actually far from normal. You may even insert yourself in the situation more actively and say, "That thing you did, my friend, was not okay. Please don't do that anymore." Suddenly, you'll have made yourself a part of a positive change. Exhale. Is it possible for you to figure out how you can find more meaning in your life? Of course. Think deeply about this and feel free to ask others to help you figure out your true purpose. Not when do you feel good, but rather what constitutes your meaning. This will bring you a sense of inner peace that you'll never want to let go of. Perhaps, as I mentioned earlier, mindfulness is an option for you. Or perhaps a skilled CBT therapist might be able to help you. There are many excellent personal coaches who are experts at challenging people to think new, revolutionary thoughts about their lives. This is often time extremely well spent. I wouldn't have been where I am today, which also happens to be where I truly want to be, if one of my coaches hadn't forced me to stop lying to myself. It felt a little painful at the time, but overall, it was the best piece of advice I've ever received. I'm definitely buying her lunch when I'm done writing this book. In closing, Linda Part 3, How Can We Help Her? To confront a person with his own shadow is to show him his own light. If the person sitting in the front row of the airplane leans their seat back as far as it will go, the person sitting behind them will have to do the same or end up with a kneeful of coffee. This spreads all the way back until whoever is in the last row has to contend with the problem. This person is seated by the wall and has nowhere to go. Sometimes I get the feeling that a growing number of us have started pushing our seats back all the way. And, somewhere along the way, we're going to have to address the issue before we lose control completely. It's time for us to revisit our old friend Linda one last time. I'm sure you haven't forgotten her. Linda with the overly supportive parents who finally had enough of her behavior and told her that she would have to make her own way in the world from now on. Linda, whose go-to strategies for getting what she wanted from other people included coercion, tears, and arguing. She used these tricks on everyone: her mother, her father, her teacher, and, as in the first example in this book, her boss. As you may recall, Linda's father ran out of patience in the end and drew the line: no more bailouts. No more running from responsibility. Time for Linda to act like an adult. Let's say you and Linda were close friends, and she came to you to complain that her father was no longer supporting her. Everything was so unfair. Nothing turned out the way she imagined it would. Let's suppose you don't actually suspect that Linda is a clinical narcissist. Men are actually much more often narcissists than women, probably because they're less empathic overall, who has been diagnosed with NPD, but that you rather see her as a victim of what I've defined here as narcissistic culture. This means that she doesn't really have a narcissistic personality as such. She simply established a bunch of behavior patterns that one could categorize as narcissistic. We can safely presume that she's never even considered her own behavior this way. And since nobody has actually said anything to her about it in the past, her father's announcement came as something of a shock to her. Let's say she never even gave it a moment's thought. Everyone does this. It's not Linda's fault that society is the way it is. She never asked to be caught up in something she's not even able to perceive. But you want to help. And this is what I want to emphasize. We need to help one another. I don't want to get all preachy here, but collectively, we do need to get back into the habit of actually having the energy to do things for one another, rather than just for ourselves. Our entire system only got us to where we are today because we based it on mutual interest and cooperation. This is your chance to do some genuine good. Naturally, I'm only speculating here, but what could you actually do to help Linda if you had the chance? Assuming you, for reasons we needn't go into, care for Linda and want the best for her. What should you do? What should you say? What do you think she would have to do in order to get the problem under control? What risks are you prepared to take in order to help her truly escape the downward spiral she's caught in? What would you be prepared to say to her? One of the most difficult things you can ever attempt is helping somebody who doesn't want to be helped. It's like trying to hug somebody who would prefer a fist fight. In my experience, the prospects of success are practically zero. The psychology here is actually pretty simple. When you give a piece of good, well-meaning advice to somebody, it also contains an implied criticism of whatever their current status quo happens to be. You wouldn't be giving them advice if everything was great, would you? So that means you're being critical. And even if the person in question claims to be unhappy with their current situation, that doesn't necessarily mean they'll be asking you to reinforce their misgivings and ram some advice down their throat to go with it. Sometimes you need to just listen, and then listen some more, without opening your mouth. Women are better at this than men. Men, as we all know, tend to head straight for the solution. Here's what you should do. If you, the reader, happen to live with a woman, she'll readily confirm this if you ask her. Sometimes all she wants is for you to listen. Let her describe her experiences for a while, without interrupting. But then what? If you're not coming up with any ideas that might help your friend improve their situation, take Linda, for example. How might you genuinely help her and get her on board with her community? The most important step is to make sure you know what the problem really is. It's not Linda's dad who is the problem here, even though Linda may have implied as much. If you don't understand which problem you're supposed to be solving, you'll never see the need for a solution. You'll have to figure that out first. And so will Linda. She will only refuse to take good advice for as long as the real problem remains invisible to her. First, identify the problem. That means you have to get Linda to describe her life as she is experiencing it right now. Only once she has accepted that she needs to change will there be any point in explaining how you think she might go about it. Is this stuff easy? Not at all. But I am fully and firmly convinced that we all need to support one another whenever we see somebody struggling. The sooner the better, of course, and it's worth remembering that most of us haven't yet succumbed to the narcissistic currents within our culture. If we are brave enough to, you have reached the end of the document.